Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes, and this episode actually, I'm sorry, like we have a plan for yesterday. Anyway, we arranged today. Thank you, Mr. Homestoner, for all of your support, Mr. Eric and Mr. Mo. I want to start from Mr. Homestoner. Mr. Homestoner, I'm sure even COVID moving around the world, but still your Pacific Crime Business Council doing different kind of initiative in North America as well as in Asia Pacific. So what new things or new conference or new initiative you are taking right now in Asia Pacific for 2021? Because we are getting too much of call from different corporations, from governments, from planning ministry. They want to know, they want to participate in your events, and what the initiative you are taking right now.
Well, we have a lot of initiatives right now.
Yes.
It sounds like I'm in an echo. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm having an echo. Is that better? Anyhow, we have several initiatives right now, but primarily in consumer aspects, where we're doing a lot of work in the film industry and a lot of work in the fashion and retail industry, the online sales and revenue industry. Eric can tell you a lot more about what our plans are this year, but we have ambitious plans for 2021.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mo, we will discuss about this Industry 4.0, and you are working for Pacific Rim Business Council as well as California Miramar University. So how do you want to introduce this point, Industry 4.0, and how we can overcome this present challenging situation? Yes, present challenging situation from this COVID-19. Yeah.
Well, it's a question. You have a question with two little questions, right? First is how are we gonna do Industry 4.0, and how does this whole thing tie together with PRBC and CalMu? With CalMu, we recently just we haven't announced yet, but you got a little preview. Peeking into what's going on at CMU. So we're going to launch 4 centers, and one of them is called Industry 4.0 Center, which is led by our beloved Dr. Guyabadi. And he's not here today, and he knows much more about that, but due to a scheduling issue, he can't be here today. Those 4 university centers, we specialize in researching our own areas, and those 4 centers. The first one I already said is Industry 4.0, and we also have a sustainability center of sustainability excellence, which is led by our own Mr. Eric Westwick, and another center we have is Women Empowerment Center, which is led by Ms. Gojian. She has been on this show for a couple of times. And finally, there's Center of Transformation Excellence, which covers the media and the marketing aspect of the Industry 4.0. And it's led by Dr. Tahavi, and we haven't seen him yet. But hopefully, one day he will come to join us on World Talent Economy Forum. So how does PRBC do Industry 4.0 then? For small business, this ties into your second part of the question. How do we get through this with Industry 4.0? So Industry 4.0 has a distinct character that is internet enabled. So it doesn't matter what which sector of industry you're at. It can be marketing, it can be production. You have to have the internet to enable Industry 4.0 perks. So what PRBC can do for clients or for its members is they can, first of all, help them understand how this whole computer thing works, and we can also provide opportunities to make matches between Industry 4.0 providers, namely Kaomu and some other providers. We also have third party to match them with our members' need. So how do we get through this? You guys at this point should know my stand on how do we get through COVID. And Kaomu has been a pretty successful example of that. Is you go online. Right? You can't go in person, you go online. That's the logical and the only logical solution that we have right now. And sensing the pattern here, one is you have to go online. One is it's all about online. Right? So marry the two together, it's made it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. How do you want to introduce this Industry 4.0 initiative, even though right now many things happening around the world, especially economy has a lot of challenges. Developing economy like country like Malaysia, Indonesia, and this kind of countries, they also have a lot of challenges in COVID-19 situation. How we can make a good collaboration with this Industry 4.0 initiative and solve present challenges and especially economical challenges.
So, the first thing is to look at the threats, because it's really just keeping businesses alive and successful and competitive. And so if you look at the threat to business, the economy has always been. If you go back and look at the 90s or that, and you look at the number one reason that small and micro businesses fail, they will tell you slow economy, market change. Same thing as today is we weren't able to last long enough for the market to come back, or the market changed. And Mr. Stoner can tell you about what the internet did to the advertising agency by itself. So that's the number one thing, is they're not prepared for changes. The other reason, surprisingly, when you look at the reason that small businesses failed, is it's because they didn't get the advice they need. There was something they didn't know. And one of my big questions is the reason they didn't get that advice is because they didn't know to ask, or was it because they couldn't afford it? Because a lot of the advice that we've gotten in the startups and things that I've helped be successful, people gave us for free because organizations did that, or they had a grant where you could come into an incubator. But if you went out at that stage, at a small and micro level, and say, I want to get the quality of Mr. Holmes Stoner or Mr. Mu Yin to give me advice. We give lots of free advice, and that's what the PRBC is about. But a lot of that is they don't ask, so they don't get the advice they need. So those are like the big ones. They're not ready for change, and even if they were ready for change, they didn't get the advice they need to successfully manage change. The other threat is coming from a completely other way, and that's the fact the verticalization and platformization of economies. So, PRBC is all about giving small and micro businesses a choice other than going out of business because of change, or being captured by these massive, unstoppable ecosystem platforms that have come up. So you become like an employee more than a business. When you get an Amazon or whatever dictating what you can sell, when you can sell, and then competing with you if they like what you're doing. So that's really, we're doing lots of research. We've got on just small and micro businesses today. And that's our biggest concern, is how do we, one, get them the advice and the resources that normally they can't afford, and number two, how do you keep them from being held captive by one of these massive, unstoppable platforms that are more and more becoming how people do business? And there's here in the U.S., there's education platforms starting up for this home learning that we've all had to do. One just raised, I think, $25 million like this week. And why? Because it's a platform of how do you connect all these different places? How do you connect people who need services with people who do services, with people who fund services? And how do you put that all together And that's our biggest changes really, is how do you take a powerful 30-year-old global networking organization and turn it into a multi-system ecosystem platform. In other words, something that allows everybody to come in and share resources, so you can actually afford a Homestone and a Mu Yin and the experts and information you need.
Thank you, Mr. Homestoner. Like, as you are working with this, doing business for media and movies and this kind of things, even in terms of technology, we are observing right now that VR, AR, many things actually integrating with this film and media and this kind of things. And I find that Malaysia, Singapore, there are many youth community there. They have keen interest about this kind of VR and AR. So, what do you think? Like, this film and media industry converted with this AR and VR in the future, or what your prediction?
I've been in the media business since 1976.
Mhm.
Okay.
Before my birth.
I was running and owning radio and television stations before you were born.
Yeah.
I have watched media go through evolution at least 5 to 6 times. When we started, there were only 3 networks and 1 independent station. It went to cable and it turned into 100 stations. It went to satellite and it turned into 1,000 stations. And then now we're into streaming where there are 10,000 stations. So what you're talking about, just last year alone, the network channels lost $71 billion of revenue because of the streaming. And all the audiences now are breaking into 1,000 pieces. So what happens is, instead of getting this massive audience, like at a big sporting event, the World Cup, the Super Bowl, you get these minute smatterings of audience. So how do you get the advertiser to commit to these kinds of mini audiences? Is basically, it boils down to content, what you're feeding, because before it was the provider that was telling you what was available for you to watch. But now it's the viewer, the audience, telling the content provider what they want to see. So it's a whole paradigm difference that's evolved over the last 20 years. And now the young people, your generation, has a whole different perspective on how they will approach media, how they will communicate with the public, and how they will attract advertising dollars than in my generation, when it was much easier because we only had a few choices, and all the audiences had to pick out of these 4 choices what they were going to watch. So what you're going to see with this new technology, with the streaming technology, with the AI technology, with the virtual glasses technology and everything, these are just new ways of expressing communication, but you still have the same thing. Content is king, as they say. Whatever content that you're providing or you're creating or you're producing has to appeal to a certain cross-section, and you have to hold their attention and keep them compelled to watch you before you're going to start seeing any income.
I actually think it goes beyond that, because so going from broadcasting, where you put everything in a package, you think you'll get the biggest pool of viewers, to narrowcasting, where you find out what each person wants and personally deliver their content that they like. The other big mix in there is who's creating that. It used to be, takes a lot of money, takes a lot of talent. There's a studio. So those broadcasts all came from, our studio in New York. And now, the studio can be, in my bedroom or home office or on the field. But the other thing you talked about was Now we're getting help creating these content. We're not great content providers, but things can go through and mix our documents and our screens and do that and go, well, here's a movie, here's that. Right now, I don't know if you guys are on Clubhouse, but
yes, Clubhouse.
Clubhouse is, hey, let's have a chat. So that's very easy content. It's, hey, we're having a chat on Industry 4.0 here. Come on and play. That's easy. The other thing beyond that is the medium. So we've been talking about channel and channel and content. But the other thing is what form. We talked about audio and video. Well, now you've got the virtual reality, augmented reality, and now people are busy talking about XR or cross reality. There's cinematic reality. So now you're talking about mixture of physical and virtual and the things where you see and feel at the same time. So as you have this chance of more people creating content, more tools to help you create content, and then more ways of feeling, seeing, hearing that content, it changes what Mr. Nguyen is working on, which is how do you capture people's attention with the viral marketing and things like that.
Yes, Mr. Mo.
So Eric touched on two perfect points. That's the evidence of why the new consumerism has to be a thing. By the way, don't look up new consumerism. It's not yet a thing. That's I'm officially coining new consumerism here. This as a media outlet. What is new consumerism? It has two parts, right? The first part is experience economy, and the second part is viral marketing. So, as Mr. Stoner said, it's not like the old days anymore. Old days, people doesn't have any choice. You have literally captive audience, right? There are only 4 or 5 channels on the TV. What else are you going to watch? And at that point, the business can put all the money they want into the advertising, but not see a dime back. And all the damage was taken by the business. But if they succeed, they only pay a fixed amount of fee to the media, right, for the advertising fee, and doesn't matter how successful they are, they got paid for that. But today, if you want to do paid content, or not paid content, paid promotion, you basically bid against your competitors, and those platforms make it so that they know how much money you are making. Therefore, they charge you to just about the amount that will just keep you alive, but never make you rich. So paid content is a fixed game. If you want to win fixed content, you have to cheat. That's the only way out today. And that is why people face online ads, right? When they're reading an article, they all of a sudden see a pop-up. They click on it. 9 out of 8, 10 times, it's never good ads. You click on those ads, you buy something. 9 out of 10 times, you lose money on that. There has to be a cheaper version of that on the internet. So why is that the case? Because whoever is advertising that has to pay for the content to show up during a news article. So that's not a sustainable way. Well, it is sustainable for the content platforms, but not really sustainable for any business who want to grow, especially small business who doesn't have much budget to outbeat its competitors. So what's the other way? What's the way that's the equivalent of in the past when you have good content, you have good traffic coming in? And the answer to that is viral marketing or generic marketing or word of mouth 2.0 or word of mouth 4.0, however you want to call it. The idea is to make sure your audience tell each other about you so that you don't rely on third party to get your message out there. So how do we get our consumers to actually talk about our product? Well, that's all about experience. If you today, like Eric said, everybody can create content, and you don't know who's going to become viral. So how can a company make sure when something become viral about their product is beneficial for them? Well, you focus on that. You define your business as to provide an experience that is shareable, that is people enjoy it so much they tell their friends on the internet about it. So that's how simple you can put it. That's the dumbed down version of this whole thing. But exactly how you do that, well, that takes a PhD to figure out, which is a doctor is the degree to figure out, which is what I'm working on right now. So how do you ensure experience is actually shareable, is viral capable? And yeah, that's the future of our marketing. It's not all doom and gloom, but it can certainly feel that way if you are used to the idea of paying somebody and your product is out. That's no longer the case. We're in a different era now. And with the, like you said, with the virtual reality, it doesn't matter if it's XR, VR, AR. It only enhance the experience. Especially during this COVID, you can't really physically go visit anything. You can still, share your VR content on the internet. Right? You can, even though for you it's 3D, you are living there. But if you have the right equipment, you can actually show people what you are seeing in the VR, but not from first person point of view. So that is another kind of experience, right? So if you can share that content, whoever is making that VR game or whoever is creating that VR experience is gonna be whoever is advertising but not really paying for it. Right? So you either get super free content or you get super expensive content. That is the new reality of internet marketing or the marketing in the internet age.
But there's a real danger in all this, and that is, this is great. Conversations like this are really important to keep abreast of so that kind of businesses aren't caught off guard to totally get something. But on a day-to-day basis, business isn't going to go get their 360 camera, go get VRs and start setting that up. So the first thing that happens is somebody's going to say, this is hot. And so buy my easy VR plan and it will save your business. And you'll start getting emails and all this, and all these people who want to sell you on the one solution. The challenge with that is, yeah, but what does your business need? It really always comes down to, yeah, but what do we need right now? And that's the hard part. So that's why from the PRBC point of view, we look at creating a platform because it's really about community to help people say, oh, this is what I need right now. How do I get it? So, instead of having these VR people pitch you or AR or AI people pitch you, it's more like, how can you get these services along with advisors to say, for your business, here's what you need. So really it comes down to businesses having two things, strategy and resources. And they have to know that they have to ask questions, because we all do. And they have to know that the resources are available. And that's what Mr. Stoner spent 30 years doing, is creating these big level resources to small level companies. So that's really the two things. It's knowing which resources you need and being able to access them, and not have somebody shove a bunch of quick fix, easy button down the throat that's going to make you $1 million tomorrow, which is what my mailbox is full of.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Sir, one specific point I want to add in our discussion, because we are discussing Industry 4.0. Tesla buy $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. And it's, I think my friend, Mr. Mu, working with viral marketings and these things already in social media, many people actually discussing on this news. So what your observation? I want to start from Mr. Homestoner about this $1 billion investment in Bitcoin.
I'm not really understanding that. Could you reiterate that question again, please?
Yes, like Tesla invest $1.5 billion in Bitcoin.
Oh, in Bitcoin.
So what your observations? Yes.
That I really don't have an opinion on Bitcoin, because I'm not well versed. I'm not studied up on it. I have been
Mhm.
around it for 20 years. Even
Mhm.
when I was living in Vietnam, it was a big popular thing back in 2012. Uh, and I
Mhm.
thought I saw it coming. I saw it like in the distance, and it's coming. It's still
Mhm.
here, but it has not arrived yet,
Mhm.
which would lead me to believe when you are dealing with electronic currency or cryptocurrency, whatever you want to call it, you still are going to have you're still going to have uh, to deal with the major banks, the
Mhm.
HSBCs, the Morgan Stanleys, all of these guys, and they run the world. They run the world of capital. They run the world and they operate on the dollar as a standard. When you come
Mhm.
in and you have electronic money, which is basically based on your electronic money is based on what you're willing to sell yours for. It's like an auction, okay? And if people are willing to pay more money for the money that you own, uh, then you make a profit. If they're not, then you make a loss. Well, the basic tenet of currency, and I've all around the world. I've been all over the world. Currency is based on consistency.
Mhm.
Currency exchange is based on what I can expect if I trade in my lira or my renminbi for $1.
Mhm.
I can look on the computer or I can look in some kind of on my mobile, and I can see what the rate is today. Well, on cryptocurrency, that could change in an hour. You could be worth $100,000, and 2 hours from now, you'd be worth $10,000 because it's all based on moving that money back and forth in milliseconds through the computer, and it's encrypted so that you're inside of this impenetrable barrier where that people you can be doing things and moving money and nobody's going to know what you're doing. So that you're not a friend of the big banks because you're outside their system. Now, you can break that system sooner or later. Maybe your generation will maybe be able to do it. But I know that in the 20 some odd years that I've been around this cryptocurrency, hasn't been able to break through, hasn't been able to do that. But in their particularly in their enterprise area and their proprietary members of people that are trading, some of them are doing very well and some of them have lost money. I don't know. I don't know it that well to give it an honest opinion, but I know one thing, and we have a lot of members that are bankers. The bankers
Mhm.
don't like it. The bankers do not like it.
Well,
Mhm.
on one hand, they do because some of the biggest investors from the bankers is in the infrastructure that drives that, which is the blockchain.
Yeah, they love the blockchain. They just don't like the cryptocurrency.
But the
Mhm.
problem with the blockchain, it allows a ledger outside of the bank control. It allows people to do ledgers that Sharif and I can do business, and we don't need Bank of America
Mhm.
involved in that process at all. He
Mhm.
had it. He had the key is, where do you keep the dollars? Well, a Bitcoin transfer, just like you said, overnight. So the potential is there because of before it, the banks own the ledgers. Why did it take 10 days to clear a check? Because the bank said so.
Mhm.
That's why it took them 10 days to update their ledger that you had no control over. Now it's like, no, we can update this ledger and promulgate it around the world, in a lot shorter time frame, and it's public, so no one can cook the books and say this transaction didn't happen or it did. So to me, that's the biggest thing is it's more justification into the blockchain backbone because the cryptocurrencies are all fighting it out. Who knows? But the blockchain, as people invest more and more in things like Ethereum, then that just puts a vote of confidence for a ledger that's outside the banking system.
Mhm.
And I know
Mr.
the
Mo.
banks want to hold on to that.
Well, so
Okay, Mr. Mo.
first of all, before I say anything about it, here's a public announcement, not public. It's basically for the benefit of public. There are a lot of scams out there on the internet saying, "Hey, pay me, I'll buy Bitcoin for you." Don't trust that. And we are here to talk about, as a concept, what is going to happen with Bitcoin. I'm not saying you should go invest in Bitcoins. I'm not saying who has the best Bitcoin out there, Bitcoin servers out there. You got your own research on that. But if you want to get to know Bitcoin better, here's the deal with Bitcoin. As Eric said, it's a banking system without banks. Of course, banks won't like it. Who is the biggest bank in the world? Right? Think about it. The Federal Reserve is the biggest bank in the world. They literally print money. Right? The world runs on dollars. But today, not so much so, but they still control 60 to 80% of all international transactions. Right? So you trade on dollars. And dollar is backed by what? By oil. It's backed by something. Yes, some scholars argue it's not really backed by anything, but Saudis still only deal with dollars. China trying to overcome that. They're trying to overthrow dollars. They are building their Shanghai exchange. I think I'm not sure the full name of that. They are building a commodity exchange in Shanghai, and it's all denominated in renminbi, and that means in the future, if two countries outside the U.S. they want to trade, they can also use renminbi, hopefully, and that's what Chinese government is hoping for. But it's a race to the throne, right? It's almost like a Game of Thrones. It's the Game of Thrones of currencies. And why does a country want their currency to become the international currency? Well, just look at the U.S. For how many years the U.S. has been running import-export deficit, right? And why can't it? If you think about it, what is going on here? U.S. is printing paper, right? Printing money on paper, and then give this paper to China. China is making stuff, send it to U.S. and China is importing all of those raw materials, the resources of the world, and then make them into products. And so the U.S. basically is living on paper, and it's pulling it off. Why can't it pull it off? Because its currency is the default currency. And why can its currency be the default currency? Well, because it has the mightiest army mightiest military in the world. And who dare to say U.S. dollar is nothing? If you look at the past wars U.S. has been involved in, it's not really about oil. It's not really about ideology. Not since the Cold War. It's all about U.S. dollars. They want to make sure U.S. dollars stay on the throne. Right. So if
absolutely correct. That's right. 100% absolutely correct.
Yeah. So I hope I didn't offend Mr. Stoner and Mr. Weststreet, because I know both of you are veterans, and I have utmost respect for that. And when I say the dollars, is not about the levels you guys are on. The soldiers, they know they are in there for a good cause, but not the government. Not the Federal Reserve. The government is in there for a good cause too. They want to serve their people. They want U.S. people to live the best life, right? But there is a conspiracy that's not really so hidden about U.S. dollars there. And so now we come back to what is Bitcoin, right? At the end of the day, it is a currency, and hopefully people who's investing in Bitcoin, other than the speculators, eventually they want it to be a functional currency. And now it's not really doing that. It's becoming a highly volatile investment vehicle, which in any way, shape, or form is not really a wise investment if you are serious about investing. Right? In the long term, it may work out, but in the long term, we are all dead. So are you is Bitcoin gonna become a real thing before you are dead? Can you bet on that? So that's the bet you are making here, and you are also making the bet against U.S. currency, and that means you are making the bet against U.S. government. So
I think the trend is more important than the specific.
Right.
And the trend is this: the ability to get, use, transfer money at higher speed and lower cost. One thing that does is that means your speed of decision making better be up to speed, because while somebody else can act on a deal in a second, it takes you an hour and you're out. So that's part of what this says. The other thing says that, you know, a blockchain has the ability to do smart contracts, which means you can take your decision making, move some of it or portions of it, even if it's one small piece, to a blockchain, and it can start doing deals. You know, a blockchain, theoretically, you could say, I'm looking to buy, you know, recycled aluminum. I need it. Okay, it can go out and start finding it and work that deal. It knows what you're willing to pay, knows what the market, and it can do it and either ask for a quick approval, or it could just, we now own the aluminum and the money's been transferred. That's the biggest thing when it comes from small businesses, the ability to act at higher speed and lower cost. Because if I don't have to pay a big bank to move something in the ledger and charge me money just to move the ledger, you know.
And there still will be a trust issue, right? You know, the banks today has another function in international trade. They guarantee transactions, but with Bitcoin system, you can't really do that unless you have a bank of Bitcoin. And
no, because it can track that transaction all the way, and it can say, Mu Yen, whether you like him or not, really does have this money, and he is willing to do this transaction. This transaction is moved. The money really did move.
Yeah, so, but has the product moved?
It can do that. That's what I mean. You can put things in place to say, yes, Sharif really has the product. Mu Yen really has the money. The deal is done. The product and the money get moved in a legally recordable and documentable transaction. And
who's going to enforce that law?
Well, you can also import it by rule base. So you could say, I'm not using any currency that promotes or in a country that buys blood diamonds. So you can say,
so let's say I want to buy silicon wafers from you, and you send me a truck of sand. And you say, I have shipped my product. And I see here's the tracking number. Here's the product. They have received this shipment. And I open it up. It's all just beach sand. It's not really wafer. And how do I claim? Hey, I just got a bunch of sand. I didn't get.
Yeah, that's why a third party can't. I'm saying these things can be built in the platform where the third party says, yeah, we've looked at the warehouse and it's there.
And that third party today is called a bank. It's not really an innovation.
Right. But I'm saying with blockchain, it doesn't have to be. Could be. It doesn't have to be. There's a potential there. That's what I mean. You're not going to, like Mr. Stoner said, you're not going to overcome this banking thing overnight. Right. What we're talking about is futures and potentials.
It's about trust, right?
The reason they start is because people didn't even trust the banks because they can mess with their ledgers, and banks have been known to do things. So it's like, well, wait a minute, who's checking on the banks? Oh, here's this infrastructure to do that. But when you start doing that, it says, well, wait a minute, trust is still an issue, but is a bank an issue? Well, it could be, but it doesn't have to be.
As in our particular case, we own a company that does manufactures steel-framed eco housing. Okay, so we buy all of these different materials and all these different building products, as well as the steel and as well as the orders, the training, the HR, the accounting, all that goes all together in one package. And we were offered a deal about 6 months ago by Citibank to put all of that information and all that data inside of a blockchain. And this is Citibank making this suggestion that if you take all of that various information that you have in your computer and you encrypt it and put it inside of this structure that's called blockchain, then only people that are on the inside can retrieve that information. And if you want that information, it's proprietary. And that seems to me a lot more useful than throwing around electronic money. I see blockchain as being a valuable tool. I just see electronic money having a hard time getting some traction.
One point, Mr. Homestoner, as you have affordable housing business, beside that World Talent Economy Forums, we have engagement with different developing nations. And I think there is a huge demand for this kind of project. So, and you are also working with this Pacific Rim Business Council with different countries. So what will be the future of this affordable housing or sustainable cities? What will
That's
be the
it.
future?
That's the only future. That's the only way that human beings are going to be able to sustain themselves in the 21st and 22nd century is to downsize, to get realistic, to start being more in tune with the technologies, to start being realistic about their daily lives. And Moo and Eric, they can tell you a lot more because they're a lot smarter about this than I am. But I see the writing on the wall here. I see the train is approaching the station, and young people have to start getting, get their feet back down on the ground and stop dreaming and start doing. Okay, because as this population, our Earth population expands to the point where there'll be 9 billion souls walking around on this planet by 2030. Uh, the immediacy is here, and the need and the necessity is here now. And you can't keep cutting trees. It's impossible to keep the growth going, cutting trees and
Very
deforesting.
important point.
You're
Yes.
standing on 20 miles of iron ore under your feet. Okay? That's recyclable again and again and again. And yet you still deforest this planet. It does not make any sense, and it's not sustainable.
Mr. Eric and Moo, what you want to add, especially the sustainable cities and these things. And this is really important. We have to cut too much of forest, even in Malaysia and many developing nations, for this housing. So, what the future we have?
Well, so if you plan a city, you use
Yes.
if you plan a city, two things happen. You use much less resources and create much less waste. That's the first thing that happens. Planned cities, I think it's up to 6 times less. So if you just build a city without planning, you're going to use a lot more materials and you're going to create a lot more excess things you have to get rid of. So that's the first advantage of planning, is that you use much more resources. An example of that is, in every part of a big city, people have to eat, people have to do all these things, buy. And so do you have to ship all that in and out every time you do that? How do you distribute that? So operations and logistics and decision making. So the big thing within smart cities is getting data. So in San Diego, all the street lights are smart. They can tell you what the traffic is. They can tell you if parking's open. So every street light has that data, and the city government is opening up those data so that people can even use that data and make decisions and proposals on themselves. So the population of the cities are actually solving problems themselves with the data. So there's a lot more of this people saying, I don't need to wait to solve problems. And that's almost like what we talked about with blockchain. This guy says, I don't need to, let's just start solving things. I don't know if you're familiar with something called the distributed autonomous organization or community. And that's where people agree on the rules, put them into a platform and let a platform access. So I don't need somebody in office to go wait 10 days so they can get a stamp and pay, $20 or $100 or $300 to do this stuff that we know how to do. So the logistic efficiency is much greater. And then the other thing is you got to put more people in nice housing that's faster and less expensive to build. And that's the problem that one of our members is working on there is, how do you spend for 30% of the cost? How do you build something really nice that young people can afford when they're starting out and that old people can move to, that still takes advantage of energy and sustainable permaculture, all that stuff, less water, the whole thing. So it's really about making and executing decisions both in a citywide level, then communities of interest within that city, then the individual level, which is, Sharif wants to move to New York City and be able to afford to live there. So individual, community, city, decision-making and execution. And within, of course, that whole context is, guess what? People have to do businesses within that. So it's the same problems for them.
Mr. Mo.
So I bet you guys hear the noise in my background, right? I think that's a pretty ironic, pretty well-timed ironic thing coming in here. We're talking about the environment, and somebody out there in my neighborhood is burning dinosaur juice, right? They're burning oil, basically putting CO2 into the atmosphere, and basically contributing to our doom. And all for what? For moving leaves from your garage, right? And what does that have to do with you, right? Why is that bothering you? Why can't you use a rack? That's the kind of sacrifice we're talking about. Everybody can talk, the talk and say, hey, I want our life to be sustainable, and when it comes to living it, screw using a rack. I'm just gonna use this thing, and if nobody else uses it, the world will be fine. But in reality, everybody thinks that way. So if you do that, the same principle goes by. You say in Malaysia, I did not know Malaysia has a deforestation problem, but the biggest deforestation you have to talk about in Brazil, right? They're saying, hey, Brazil has the economy has been screwed for many years, and we need a jump start. How do we jump start this? We're just gonna cut this tree in the Amazon forest, right? Another thing is, I think it's in Guilin, China. They cut the government actually put up the forest. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me with this noise in my background. Let me know if the noise got too out of hand. So recently they find out, that the local government, the central government actually put up the forest. They actually plant trees just to stop the wind from blowing too crazy, and they want to make it green. But the local government wants economic growth. So what they did is cutting off those trees and start growing grapes there. And grapes doesn't do anything about the wind blowing and doesn't do anything to make the earth green. And they are growing grapes in a desert. And that logo is a desert. And grape, if you know anything about it, it's the first thing in it is water. And it drinks a lot of water to actually make yield. And they basically destroy the forest for growing grapes and just make the local environment even worse. So there's always that constant battle in your head. Yes, you would like to think you are a green person. You want to make the earth sustainable. But when it comes to doing it, can you really say no to money coming in your way, right? It's not really if you do it, you become rich. It's if you don't do it, you stay poor. And who wants to stay poor, right? So you might think you are doing a right thing, but in reality, you are destroying the earth. So having that awareness is crucial. And how do you have that awareness? Well, goes back to I'm a marketer. Marketing is in my blood. It goes back to my domain. Right? You use new consumerism to promote your green ideas. You can't spend money to promote it because by itself it will be an oxymoron, right? Using money to promote green ideas, right? You're wasting, by definition, you're wasting resources. So if you can get people to start talking to each other about how to be aware of, living a green life, then you get it, right? Because at that point you already have an existing platform. Instead of having to push it out, instead of having to be wasteful. So green has to be contagious as an idea so that everybody can actually adapt it. Otherwise, we're just talking hot airs.
So if you look at what's happening with the whole world, it used to be, process improvement. a better way to cut this, to grow this. And the new technology helps you with individual process improvement. And then it was workflows. It's like, well, how do we put this stuff together more efficiently? And so, with the new technology, we can make changes and anticipate and do forecasts and change these workflows in midstream in seconds without disrupting things. It used to be, you got to give me 2 weeks ahead of notice if you want to do that. It's like, no, something changed. Okay, we'll just slide that around. But the biggest changes are in the business model improvements now. And that's where Amazon and all this stuff we're talking about comes. It's business model innovation. And so what's the problem with the small business is one of them is getting swallowed up by somebody else's business model innovation. So that is a big thing, is we need to make sure that collectively these small and micro businesses get to innovate their business model without somebody forcing it on to them, say, well, this is the new business model. You come in and here's what you get paid. And the model I look at is, if you look at the warehouse stores, like in the US, they have Costco. You pay, Costco gets the same percentage if you buy a stick of bubble gum versus a new car. They just said, we're going to negotiate the best price we can, and here's our cut. And that's kind of one thing we're investigating at the PRBC is, what if the platform exists to support the people who use the platforms, and you have smart people who can business model innovate as fast as the rest of them, and you get to play with that. But instead of saying, this platform is for us, you can play, and we'll decide what you pay, to say, no, the platform, there's a small cut the platform needs to pay for the platform, because there's an investment in everything it takes to run things. But what if the purpose of that isn't to make as much money as we can off of every single person in there? So, let's see what you're making, and let's see how much you cannot make. Say, no, make more, you make more. The platform, by producing this stuff, will get a tiny cut of that. And also, we can then crowdfund resources and collectively pay for these solutions that individually no one person could pay. So to me, it's this business model innovation, and it's the same with cities. Cities need new business models, and they're even working on that. So it's cities aren't going to change that much. Yeah, the technology changes, but the trends are there. People are moving from rural to cities along the coast. But we already know that. We've seen that coming for years. We have projections. The difference is, okay, you inject technology, but how are we going to do business differently? I guess what we shift is from shareholder value. What do the owners of the platform make, versus stakeholder value? How does everybody benefit from the customer through the whole? So how do you optimize value from everybody in the community? So you think of these business models as communities, ecosystems, more than individual. And that's the real key. That's how you keep a small business from becoming a captured agent of somebody else's business model.
You made a really good point there, in the fact that as people in the countrysides, particularly in Asia and Latin America, as people in the countrysides look for a better life and immigrate to the cities, you're going to be seeing somewhere between 65 and 75% of the people of the world living in urban centers by the year 2050. So that there won't be anybody out there in the countryside that's going to be doing these things. Therefore, once again, the morphing or the evolution of small business has to be acclimated to the change of environment from the countryside into the cities. And how do we help them, acclimate that change? How do we assist small businesses and micro businesses in surviving in these big metropolitan areas? That's our challenge, because what we've been doing, and Sharif knows this, what we've been doing is going into these countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, and most of the people that we're communicating with are either suburban or countryside people. That's not going to be the case in the future. All in China probably, and Mr. Mu will agree with me. The biggest challenge that the Chinese economy has is how to deal with their immigrants. Their immigrants are not coming from other countries; they're coming from inside their own country. And people like the old guard in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, these big cities, they have to protect themselves from this sea of immigrants coming from the countryside that are making these squatter camps for miles and miles and miles around these cities, because that's the new phenomena. And we, as being their organization, their champion, the people that are supposed to be looking out for their welfare, have to come up with a solution. And that's why I'm so confident into Dr. Ali and Eric and Mr. Mu and the rest, because we've got a brain trust here that can come up with solutions for these kinds of issues. I can't do it, but they can. And
the key to our brain trust is it's not us. The key is our ability to reach out and involve more people. We're not a closed system, like, oh, it's got to be done within our organization and produced here, and if we don't do it, it doesn't get done. Our strength is constantly looking for stakeholders who are involved in a problem, and the skill is putting them together and managing and running it. I mean, I've never seen anything where you get so many people so quickly that are small that would come in and create something large together, yet still retain their own value. Like the company that Mr. Stoner's talking about, PRBC doesn't own them, and the Innovative Sustainable Living doesn't own them, but together we grow the PRC, we grow Innovative Sustainable Living, and individually they grow their own companies. And there's another thing, even though there's this wave of moving into the cities because people feel they have to, there's also a wave of people not wanting to be in the city anymore and move out. In the US, there's whole places where they put in huge, fast internet as a first step, and they've created it to run these businesses in these areas, these little cities. So there's the chance, if we talk about all these innovations, product innovation, business process innovation, workflow innovation, and business model innovation, there's a chance that business model can actually reverse the trend of everybody having to go to a city to survive.
Yep. Counter-urbanization or de-urbanization. The UK has been experiencing that for the last couple of decades. US starting to see that trend. I used to live in Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco, you name it. I work in San Francisco. I go to school in San Francisco, and I live in Oakland. But I'm part of that the urbanization trend in the US. Right? I realize for the rent I'm paying in Oakland, I can basically buy a mansion in the countryside and use that money to pay my mortgage. Right? So that's how big the difference is.
Did that? They moved from San Francisco and were able to buy a house.
Exactly, and I live in a tiny. You can't even call it an apartment. It has one. They call it a studio, but it's basically just somebody's backyard shed. That's where I live, and that's considered prime real estate in Bay Area. So as you see, as people rushing into the cities, people who do well in the city, their life got harder and harder, and then all of a sudden they realize, why do I have to be here, right? So all of my work can be remotely done, especially with COVID hitting. People will start realizing, especially in developed countries, people will start realizing, if I have internet, I can just maintain my lifestyle and have a even better lifestyle. So that feels like a problem that's going to solve itself. But the problem is, can you solve that problem before the population crisis in your major cities actually overrun the city, actually ruin the city? And once that happens, your economy gonna fall, and then you get into a downward spiral. That's nothing people want to see. So the trick is to figure out what actually make people tick and what will get the so-called elites to start moving to the countryside. And also Eric said infrastructure matters, right? The reason why they're not moving to countryside, there's no internet. That's the problem. That's the biggest problem for a lot of elites today. And if you talk about China, the wealth distribution and the education distribution is really bad within the country. The east side and the west side of the country, east side, but the Eastern Asian and Western Asian of the country are almost like two countries. If you divide China in two in the center, and if you look at the east side, it's gonna be a country that's better than it. Basically, it's a developed country. It's better than a lot of European countries, at least. And if you look at the west side, it's worse than a lot of African countries. So that's the problem of a developing country. And I think China's answer to that is actually One Belt and One Road initiative. And so, East is well divided because all of its import export actually go through the eastern ports, seaports and airports there. But on the west side, you don't have anything. Food doesn't even grow on the west side. So what they're trying to do is to build railroads to actually have some trading going on in western region of China. And I think that's a duplicatable strategy. So if you don't want people from the poor region to move to your city, you start thinking about how to make their hometown richer so that they don't even think about moving. And that's
exactly what happened. I got a call about 5 years ago from a gentleman from Argentina. His English was suspect, but he put his secretary on to speak with me. He was the Secretary of Agriculture of the nation of Argentina. Apparently, they have what they call the campesino, which is the countryside farmers. And when things went sour down there and the economy started to crash, they started flooding into Sao Paulo and, well, not Sao Paulo, but capital city there in Argentina, and making things very difficult for the country. So they came up with a budget of $250 million and to build small towns back in the countryside made from steel framed housing that were community based, so the people could have a better house than they had when they left, much better, and much better living conditions than they lived in these ghettos in the city, and try to relocate them back out to the countryside where they came from. This is going to be a phenomenon that's going to happen a lot in the next 20 years. So we anticipated this. That's why we have ISL, which is our community planning company, to anticipate where this is going.
But cities are great places, and the country is great. And there's a mix of what works better in cities, what works better in the country, and what you like. And the idea is really, and COVID has showed us a lot is more possible than we thought. If you look at New York City and San Francisco, on each coast, is people who don't really need to be in the city don't really need to be in the city. People who want to be in the city or don't want to be in the city can often not have to be in the city. People who want to be in the city can go to the city. So the idea is, how do you make each of those better for everybody? How do you make the country better? How do you make the city better? And the most important thing you can do is help somebody with a small business, which consists of most of the business in the entire world. How do you make people successful in being able to get the right people with the right resources, and most importantly is the right strategies? Because even if you have a strategy, what you learn more than anything is your strategy has to be very resilient. When the economy takes a while coming back, what are you going to do? When you get an environmental hazard or a medical hazard, what are you going to do? And It used to be you could look at the past and forecast into the future. And so you could say, oh, here's what we have to plan for. Now nobody knows what the future is like. You can't forecast. The availability of the value of forecasting, in some cases, getting better with data, but in other cases is getting way worse because you just don't know what it's going to be. So that's why we are so working so hard to partner with people who can do strategies that work without forecasting. How do you survive? How do you be sustainable and resilient, even when you know things are going to change? And that's why we have centers just studying that, things we're partnering with. So we've got the Center for Technology, Industry 4.0, Sustainability Center of Excellence, transformation, people, diversity. We know all those are going to be big drivers in the world, and it's important to be able to operate those in a way where you can constantly update what works, innovate your workflows and your business models so that people can be happy living in the country or living in the city for the next 10, 20 years. Not well, we're okay in the country for this year, but next year, who knows?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eric, Mr. Homestoner, and Mew. It's really, really great discussions. We find many ways that how people get benefit from Pacific Rim Business Council. Besides that, we understand about different technological issues, especially the blockchain issues, social media marketings, as well as sustainable cities. So hopefully with the collaborations of Pacific Rim Business Council, different business organizations from Asia Pacific, they get a lot of like solution and support, and I'm sure that you have many innovative solutions and the better ecosystem which will actually help to grow this economy. So thank you for joining today's sessions. It's really, really nice session for us. Hopefully see you after 2 weeks from now. So what will be the concluding remarks for today's session? I want to start with Mr. Mo, then Mr. Eric, and finally Mr. Homestoner for concluding remarks. Mr. Mo.
Well, for me, one sentence is the internet is now. So get on the train.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Just remember, to be successful, you need great strategy and you need great resources. What's important that together we build a community which allows people to get their strategies and to get their resources in ways where we can work together to constantly get people what they want and in a way that's affordable. And so we're excited to work with great people like yourself and partners who are making that happen. So as we get more and more of us working together, we get more powerful, better solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. And Honorable Chairman, Mr. Homestoner.
I just want all of these young people that are watching you today to remember one thing. All your dreams are right at your fingertips. But to get there, you need laser focus. Focus on one thing. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't go all over the place. And whatever you do, use your seniors, use your elders. They have already made the mistakes. You don't need to make those mistakes when you have the people of resources around you that can help you, advise you, and keep you from making the mistakes that will hurt you.
Thank you, Mr. Homestoner. I'm sure people like Mr. Homestoner, Mr. Eric, Mr. Mood, they are very good mentors, and Mr. Homestoner has huge business background and relationship from around the world. So I'm sure our youth community can learn many more things from Pacific Rim Business Council. Thank you for joining today's session. It's really, really great session for us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.